Okay, here we go. Ladies, we're so glad that you're on. We're just going to give a quick little overview so you know what to expect, and we're going to try to keep it at about an hour or so. It might go a little bit over, so I hope you have a little bit of a cushion there. But basically, we are going to introduce ourselves. For those of you who don't know one or the other, we are going to go over Sophie's health history. She's going to be like the guinea pig example today. So that, I think it's really important when you're working with practitioners that, they can really relate to you. And I've found that to be very helpful in my practice, that I can relate to my clients on a personal level and kind of encourage them, hey, I've been through this, I get it. Plus, just to be quite honest, as human beings, we're more interested in what affects us, right? And so as practitioners, we get super interested in what we have personally gone through. So you can know that, Sophie has gone through similar things that you are, and she's turned that into a passion for hormone health. And I've gone through similar things that you have, and it's transitioned into a passion for gut health. And we both know the other side, and we just sort of niche a little bit in one or the other. So then we're going to go through specific test reviews. We're going to keep them simple to understand and just kind of go over the big picture, but we're going to give you an idea of how powerful it can be to do the functional lab testing and get that personalized look at like what is actually happening in your body, because it can make the biggest difference as opposed to guessing and, Dr. Google and I'm, spotting, this month, what does that mean? And is my estrogen too low? I don't know, but if we test and we don't guess, we can make changes that are very targeted, and we are able to do that in a very effective and quick way. So then we'll talk a little bit about protocols, and then we have a really special announcement at the end. So excited.
So exciting.
Sophie, do you want to start with the introduction real quick?
Sure. Yeah. So, hey, everybody. I see a lot of family, friends, and just clients and lots of fun people on here. I'm so happy you're here to join us. And so basically, as Kylene mentioned, I focus more on women's menstrual health and hormones, and Kylene focuses more on gut health. But the thing is that the two impact each other. So a lot of our clients might be going to Kylene because they have chronic IBS or digestive issues, and then people are coming to me because their ovaries are acting up, as Kylene said earlier. But the two kind of go hand in hand together. So we're definitely not going to give you like a whole hour long of how the two are connected, but in both myself and Kylene's experience, when our gut health wasn't taken care of, it had a downstream effect of completely screwing up our hormones. So usually hormones don't just like stop working one day. They will get messed up because there's nutrient issues, or you're not absorbing your food from your gut, or there's some sort of internal toxin or heavy burden like a parasite or something like that going on in the body. And when we're under a whole bunch of stress, so when Kylene and I talk about stress, it's a little bit different than maybe the way you think about stress, which is mental, emotional. My boss is sending me a really annoying email. It can also be things like heavy metal accumulation, or perhaps you have a parasite or something like that. So when all these things kind of compound, or gluten, or gluten.
Food sensitivities.
Food sensitivities is another really big stressor. And all these stressors, they fill up our big stress bucket as humans. And then they have like this kind of downstream effect. And one of the big systems in the body that gets screwy is hormones. And women seem to notice it more because we have a monthly report card in our period, right? And so we're like, oh my gosh, where's my period? Or it was irregular, or I was spotting, or it was really heavy. Like, what is happening to me? And so we kind of have this constant reminder of what's going on. But the way Kylene and I look at this is we have to deal with the upstream issues that could be causing the downstream symptoms. So we don't spot treat, we don't symptom treat. We look at the whole body and how can we affect massive change. And this is a really big paradigm shift for a lot of people, because we are in the mental space of let's take this for that. I have a headache, I'm going to take Advil. So this is a big shift, and but it's really effective, right? For long lasting change and like longevity. So when we work with clients and things, one-on-one, it's never about, oh, I'm going to work with you for 3 months or 6 months or something. It's I'm going to give you the tools so that you can like actually take charge of your health for the rest of your life. So just know that if you're dealing with a specific symptom that brought you to the webinar today, it could be really related to something else. And we're going to try to show that today, so that you can feel empowered by, your health choices. And I think that's the second part I'd love to just say is taking my own health in my own hands was like the best gift that I could have ever been given, after being tossed around the medical system for way too many years and getting like no answers and feeling pretty terrible. So did I miss anything, Kylene, in the introduction?
No, that's exactly it. And just kind of to reiterate, what we do is we look at your whole life, your whole health history, kind of you as a whole being. And so we don't diagnose, we don't treat something. What we do is we look at these labs and we say, where is there support that needs to come in? And when I think about it, I think about it as a symptom that's showing up as a signal. And it's asking your body for one of two things. It's asking either for a stressor to be removed. And Sophie listed off a number of examples of what that could be. So we're either asking for a stressor to be removed, or it's asking for something to be brought in, whether that's more sleep or better nutrition, or maybe you have some nutrient deficiencies that need to be brought in. So it's kind of a twofold thing. And regardless of what's going on, you're not going to see results from supplementation, from all these other tools that you're going to be utilizing unless your gut is healed, for the simple fact that that's where everything's absorbed. And if it's not functioning right, if it's inflamed, if your body thinks that there is something really, really important, like 3 parasites or something going on that it has to handle, fertility ability gets put on the back burner, because literally your body just says, I don't feel safe. And it has to feel safe and functioning well and have all the nutrient stores it needs in order to bring life into this world. And so that's kind of why I think gut health is so, so important. And like Sophie mentioned, both of us kind of discovered, I actually got into this because my hormones were totally whack. And they were totally messed up, and I had some crazy stuff happen. And so I wanted to fix it. I wanted to learn about my body. And ultimately that led me to gut health, because I knew that that is where I needed to focus in order for the downstream effect of balanced hormones to even be possible in my body. So yeah, I think that's a really good kind of summary of why we look at both of them. And both of us do both in our practice. But again, we just kind of, specialize on like one side of it. And so we felt like, coming together is really supportive to that. Sophie, do you want to give like just a quick intro of like who you are real quickly? And then I'll do the same just for anybody who doesn't know me.
Yeah, I'm a hormone nerd, an ex-theater nerd, and a functional diagnostic nutrition practitioner. So is Kylene, FDNP. We just explained how we work. And really, I just really like to help women with their menstrual cycle. I like talking about it, just the same way I'm sure Kylene likes talking about poop. I love talking about how can we help people with their hormones, because I just dealt with so many of my own crazy stuff and there were just no answers. And if there's like one goal, I'm getting chills thinking about it, but if there's just one goal I have in my life and like one mission, it's to empower women so that they can feel amazing, not just okay in their bodies, specifically around their menstrual health. And I think as a secondary also around their gut health, because that's also obviously very important. So that's just a really quick overview.
Yeah. So it's so funny. I didn't know you were a theater person too. So we have more in common than I even knew.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I was an opera major, and now I'm a gut health specialist. So that's my little summary right there. But that was because of health issues that I experienced. In 2015, I had a total crash. So if some of you are coming on this with hormone issues, you may relate to some of what I'm going to describe. I spent about 2 weeks with what I could only describe as a chronic panic attack. It was nonstop. It was constant crying. I couldn't sleep. There was insomnia. I had extraordinary anxiety. I had intrusive thoughts. And this was not like who I was. I'm a happy person, and like this was really, really scary and weird. And I didn't understand there was nothing like dramatic in my life that should be causing this much anxiety. And so it felt really weird. So I couldn't sleep either. And yeah, she says I can relate. So I couldn't sleep. And, I started going to the doctor because I was like, man, she could just give me a sleeping pill. Like, give me like a horse pill to knock me out at night, because if you can wake up the next morning, things will look brighter, right? Like sleep is so powerful. And the sleeping pills she was giving me like did basically nothing. Like that's how ramped up my body was. So the second time I went to her, the only thing she could offer me was an antidepressant. And I knew that that was not what was going on. I was like, I'm not depressed. That's not what's happening. I filled it as like an emergency backup if I couldn't figure anything else out. But while I was in her office, I actually said, hey, should I get my hormones tested? And she said, well, if you're still cycling normally, I don't really see the value to that right now. So I left that office with no hope, no direction, no encouragement, no answers. And it was up to me to follow my gut. And I did. I went ahead and pursued hormone testing on my own. And I'm so glad I did because they were crazy. I had postmenopausal levels of progesterone, which can absolutely cause extreme anxiety and make you feel like you're totally crazy. And that's how I was feeling. And so I was able to get the support to, do what I call get out of the pit so I could function as a normal human being again and get back to my life. And from there, my curiosity was totally triggered. I was like, I have to figure this out. I've got to be able to help other people and heal my body and have this never, ever, ever, ever happen to me again. So I became an FDN, and then I learned how the gut was connected. And I discovered that sure enough, I did have a lot of gut problems. I had multiple parasites. I had H. pylori. I had a lot of imbalance in my gut. So fast forward, I made a lot of progress in those areas. I kept feeling better. I increased my energy. I improved my sleep. I did all of these things. I started to feel, so good. And in 2019, I was diagnosed with cancer. So I, at that point, was able to take my healthy integrative approach, and I approached cancer the same way. So I did conventional treatment right alongside integrative. So I used supplements and lifestyle and nutrition to support my body through the process. And I was able to kind of identify that the tumor had been there for quite a long time. I found pictures where it had been in my body for 2 years before I found it. So that really encouraged me that, hey, what I had been doing those past 2 years, improving my health and focusing on these things, had possibly stopped or definitely slowed down, or at least at minimal supported my body during this period of time. And so I was going to go through treatment and then use everything that I have already learned and incorporated to stay in remission. That's what I've done. And I wrote a book, it's right there, called Healthy Through Hodgkin's, and it shares about my integrative experience because I think it's so powerful and I want to be able to help other people. So super fast summary of my history. And so welcome to everybody who has joined since we've started talking. We're so glad that you are here. Sophie, are you ready to get into a brief health history just to kind of share? I kind of did that in my intro with me, but we're about to look at your test. So can you kind of talk about a little bit of your history and what's going on?
Yeah, and just like, oh my gosh, ladies, Kylene's story is so relatable, I feel like, for so many women. And I have a lot of similarities in that story as well. I always love hearing your story, Kylene.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. And I know it's easy to like rush through it, but if you're thinking, oh my gosh, that sounds like me, like, Kylene and I tell our stories often.
Yeah.
Anyways, so yeah, health history for me. So really brief, like I'll do a 5-minute quick summary like Kylene did, so we can talk about how this relates. And I hope that this is really relatable. And if you hear something that's relatable to your story and you feel like sharing, please comment, because one of the things that we love to do is like build communities for women so you guys don't feel alone. So I know that there's a lot of people in here probably sharing the same things. So, all right, let's go into all my stuff. So I had started having IBS-like symptoms when I was 16 years old. So in the middle of high school, I literally remember finally being dragged to the GI doctor because my mom said it is not right that you can't even drink water without stabbing pain. That is not normal, because as I'm sure a lot of people can relate to, I had such bad pain with eating that I just thought it was normal to be bloated, constipated, or running to the bathroom every single time I ate. And obviously that now I realize that that's not true. So long story of that short, I basically went to the GI doctor. He scoped me, doing a colonoscopy when you're 16 years old, super not fun. He basically said there's nothing wrong, except for that you have irritable bowel syndrome and you can't have any acidic food, and you're going to take a proton pump inhibitor for the rest of your life and never have coffee, alcohol, all the fun things in life. chocolate. So I did that. I followed that advice and I got nowhere. I mean, not even a little bit better. So I went through high school and college, just like literally being the girl that had to run to the bathroom. I was a stage manager in theater. I would like be calling a show and have to like have someone hop on the headset and like call the rest of the lights and sound cues because I was like in the bathroom so sick. Obviously, this is just not a way of life. So after college, I was in a relationship with somebody who was mentally and emotionally abusing me on a daily basis. And that stress of trying to start a theater career on Broadway and having all these digestive issues coupled with like stress just completely destroyed my hormones, specifically my thyroid. So I went through a period when I was about 22 where my hair was falling out in clumps. I was about 40 pounds heavier than I am today. I had, of course, all the digestive issues I just explained to you, but some other really troubling things. I was all of a sudden, like Kylene mentioned, my anxiety and my depression were just unmanageable. I actually attempted suicide twice while in that relationship, while dealing with this. And this was not normal for me, obviously. And I was dealing with all of that, and I was also really fatigued. I could sleep for 12, 18 hours, 8 hours. It didn't matter. I just couldn't get out of bed. Trying to think if there's anything else. The only other things were just my nails are brittle and breaking, and I was cold all the time. Now, if anyone here has Hashimoto's or hypothyroidism, you can probably notice these signs. They're classic Hashimoto's signs. And Hashimoto's is an autoimmune disease of the thyroid, which sits here in your throat. So I got diagnosed with hypothyroidism. I was so relieved, like Kylene, that I had a pill I could take to fix the problem, right? I felt 50% better, so I could function. And I kind of went back to work thinking, great. 6 months later, all the symptoms returned. I went back to the doctor thinking, just like my eyes, right? I just need a higher prescription of this thyroid medication. That didn't work. She said, your thyroid is completely normal. Your TSH is in range. And there's nothing else I can do for you. I would recommend going on an antidepressant and seeing a therapist. This is how you're going to be for the rest of your life. So like Kylene, just no hope. And it looks like there's some other people being given no hope by doctors. Yeah. I'm glad this community exists too, Kylene. So yeah, there I was, like at this point, I think 23, just completely like felt like I was an 80-year-old woman, and so sick. And I finally found functional medicine, just like Kylene, and I found out that I had leaky gut, which maybe we'll talk about a little bit today. And that was causing, and that plus the stress from my relationship was causing a huge downstream effect and completely toppling my thyroid. Thyroid is really connected to your gut and also really connected to your stress. So I also had it genetically. So oftentimes if we have genetic predispositions, things that happen in our life can trigger them to kind of display themselves. So long story short, just like Kylene, I realized I really wanted to help other women with this. There have been many more issues since then. I will just list them out and we can talk about them when we go through the test. I have been diagnosed with small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, also known as SIBO. I have been diagnosed with the leaky gut and the Hashimoto's, obviously. I've been diagnosed with ovarian cysts that exploded and I was hospitalized overnight because I was bleeding in my abdomen. I was on birth control, came off of that that's when that ovarian cyst occurred. And 2 years ago, I was dealing with like Kylene postmenopausal hormones, like just progesterone was tanked, estrogen was tanked, everything was just tanked. Trying to think if there's anything else. I think that's it. Fun. Yeah. And now we're gonna go about what's happening now for Sophie.
Yeah, for sure. And thank you for sharing that, Sophie. I know that a lot of women on this webinar can relate to at least a piece of that themselves. And you were sharing some really honest and vulnerable pieces. And so I know sometimes that's hard. So thank you for sharing. You were mentioning the thyroid and stress and the gut. So I just want to make sort of a really quick connection for people about why these are so interrelated. So your gut has this lining of cells that have little fingers on them, and those fingers they have two main purposes: for motility, because they kind of move around and they push things forward, and nutrient absorption. Stress directly impacts the inflammation and integrity of that gut lining. And so if you have some leaky gut or some inflammation, whether it be from mental, emotional stress or anything else that we've listed out, you can have lack of nutrient absorption. So if you have lack of nutrient absorption, even if you're eating the healthiest diet in the world, if you have lack of nutrient absorption because of this damage that's occurring in your gut, and your thyroid and your hormones and your period and your cycle and all these things are wildly dependent upon nutrient status. And so you'll notice sometimes, some people respond incredibly well to taking like a B vitamin. And they're like, oh my gosh, or like a multi, oh my gosh, that solved all my problems. Well, that's great. They must have really great absorption. And other people do all the things and they can't. They see no result from it. I take all these supplements and like nothing ever happens. So that may be because of nutrient malabsorption. Well, if you have bacteria and pathogens, and Sophie just listed out quite a few things that she had going on in her gut, those can also steal your nutrients, and they can also directly impact the health of that gut lining. And so all of these things come together in the big picture as being really, really important to identify and address. And so that's why today we're going to look at a hormone test and we're going to look at a stool test. So looking into your gut microbiome and like what's going on in there. And we're going to talk about, why they're connected. And it's for those very reasons. And so I personally don't really like to run a hormone test without looking at the gut. And that's why, is because it'll show things like, hey, you have some inflammation. Well, then you have to ask, well, where is that inflammation coming from? Well, when you reverse engineer inflammation, 9 times out of 10, it's probably starting in the gut for one reason or another. And so it's very difficult to fully address one problem or the other without looking at them together synergistically. So that's what we're going to do. So Sophie, which test do you want to start with?
Oh, I muted myself. Well, I feel like we should probably look at the gut since that's influencing my hormones.
All right, cool.
So here we get to be super vulnerable and look at Sophie's insides.
Yeah. Okay. So can you guys see this? Just let me know. Shake your heads if you can see it. Okay, cool. All right. So no HIPAA laws are being broken because obviously Sophie is on the line. Yes.
Does anyone have, I realized we just talked for like 15 minutes. We're going to talk at the end for questions, but if anyone has anything burning before we go into this, please let us know in the chat.
And just stop me too, because I can't see, oh wait, maybe I can pull the chat up. Oh, I can. I just had to click a little button. Okay. So when I share my screen, oops, can you see me sharing that? Mm-hmm. Okay. Then I'll close it and you can just let me know. Okay, so let's talk about the GI map. This is my favorite test in the entire world. There's not a single client that I will take on without running this test, basically.
Same.
Yeah. So one thing I want to share with you guys is that Sophie's GI map is extremely clean, and this is evidence to all of the work that she has done. So for somebody that has had a history of SIBO, of leaky gut, of all of these different things that she just mentioned, when you put in the effort that she has put in, and she's run other labs, and this has been an ongoing process for her for a couple years. I was very impressed when I got her GI map. Now there are some things we're going to go over. There's a couple things that did show up. There's always tweaking that can be done. However, this is really good. I've seen GI maps where there's just red across the board, like everywhere, everything shows up, and this is not the case for Sophie. So she's a really excellent example of how when you put in the work and when you follow the process, things improve. Absolutely. So this first page here, you'll notice there's nothing. There's no red. There it says DL. That's beyond detection basically in this first page, which is really great because here we have C. diff, which is a very difficult to kill bacteria that's often got in hospital settings and things like that. Often it's very antibiotic resistant as well. I've had several clients with that. We've knocked it out without any antibiotics, but it tends to be a more difficult one. Usually people look at that as like a hard. There's some parasitic pathogens here that are not showing up as well, so that's good. And then we come to the second page here and we see H. pylori. So again, a lot of positives here. So we see H. pylori show up, and H. pylori is something you absolutely want to address because it is highly associated with ulcers, acid reflux. If you're having some, pain or issues with, digestion, H. pylori lowers your stomach acid, which lowers your absorption of iron and B vitamins and other minerals that you are eating from your healthy diet. And so we want to make sure that this is something that's addressed. Long term, if it's not addressed, it is associated with some stomach cancers and problems like that. And so we want to make sure that it is gone. However, on the positive side, you'll see here there are virulence factors underneath it. These make H. pylori much more virulent, it's a good name, and more difficult to address. She has none of those, and you'll notice here it doesn't even say hi. So it's there, it's present, but it's not like this major infection that is just raging in her body. And I guess, Sophie, I'll ask you, do you know of any actual symptoms right now that you would directly correlate to H. pylori?
Yeah, thanks for pausing. And also, yeah, I'll give you symptoms and then I have a thought. Yeah, so I have some like mild digestive pain and discomfort. Sometimes I'll get some bloating. Sometimes I'll get a little constipated, which for me transformed from like 5 years or 8 years ago, whatever. I used to like go to the bathroom once every 3 days. Now it's like, yeah, maybe it's a little bit difficult to pass the stool. So I think it correlates really well. It's like, it's there, there was something up. I knew there was something up, but it's not, debilitating me the way it was, I guess.
Yeah.
And something I just want to mention here, is, when I was first sick, we didn't have this type of screening tool, or at least I didn't have access to this. And so when I look back at like what Kylene will explain, is kind of the downstream effect of having H. pylori, it is very possible that I have always had this and not known it. Mm-hmm. And it has caused problems with like SIBO, for example.
And it may have been much higher in the past.
Yes. So I think that's really important to note, and why we do this testing, and why I wish I'd had access to this at the time, because holy moly, this could have been like one of the root issues I've had for, I don't know, 15 years of my life.
Yeah, for sure. And H. pylori actually is one thing that is it's a little tricky to get rid of, and it is one that likes to come back. And so there's a couple things that we do when we approach this in a protocol, and I like to go full force with it because of those reasons. That I just tell my clients, hey, I would rather you put a little more energy, a little more effort into getting rid of this the first time we do a protocol than we're kind of nonchalant about it, so that it doesn't come back. Because if we don't put all the effort into it, and they are one of those people that just has a tendency for this particular bacteria to come in, then it's more likely to come back. So a couple things that I recommend when this shows up is being really strict to the point that it's annoying. So we change out toothbrushes every week because it is a highly transmissible. We put the partner on a mild version of the protocol because it can be transmitted through saliva. And so you don't want, to be kissing your partner and going through this very expensive protocol, and, all of a sudden you're getting it back and you're transferring it back and forth. And so when I had it on my test, I was on the protocol, my husband was on the protocol, my son was on the protocol. We were all changing out our toothbrushes. I was like, this is not getting spread throughout my house. And the other thing is that H. pylori can kind of be a little sneaky. They'll go up into your gallbladder and they'll hide out. And so you got to do a gallbladder flush to make sure that whatever it is that you are doing, botanicals or teas or whatever it is that you're doing to kill these guys, that you're actually flushing them out of the gallbladder so that you're actually getting all of the infection, and they're not going to come back that way, or you have less of an opportunity for them to come back. So the other thing that I recommend is that people throw out lipsticks, lip glosses, anything that they wear, near their mouth regularly, and that they avoid coffee, because the acidity from the coffee can can stimulate their proliferation. Now, the kind of flip side to that is, once you do not have H. pylori, making sure that your stomach acid is at a healthy level, meaning you don't have suppressed stomach acid, is one of the things that prevents them. However, when you have an infection and it lowers your stomach acid and you drink coffee, that has been shown to stimulate them. So it's a little bit of a timing thing there. So overall concept here, this isn't a major infection. She'll be able to knock it out. No big deal. Normal bacteria flora, there's not much going on here. Akkermansia is a little bit high. Now, Akkermansia isn't typically considered a bad bacteria, so it actually is a mucus degrader, which sounds really bad, but actually what it does is it
Sounds
generates
disgusting, doesn't it?
but it generates mucus-derived sugars and like microbiome metabolites that actually support the growth needs of other microbiomes. So it's not necessarily a bad one. However, with many things, there's a balance. And so when it is too high, it can be associated with some negative things like some autoimmune disease, like multiple sclerosis and things like that. So it's not necessarily a bad bacteria. There's ranges that we want to see, and this one's a little bit high. But you'll see down below, Phylomicrobiota. These are the two main families of bacteria. So we have gram-positive and gram-negative, and we want to see them within a certain range. Now her ratio there, you'll see below 1. That's what we want to see. That's great. But you see that both families are low. So this is just sort of indicating that her general bacteria population in her gut is low, and that could use a little bit of support. So what you're not seeing is a ton of reds, a ton of high overgrowth. You're seeing a lot of things in normal range, a few things that are out of range, and then an overall suppression of bacteria in general. And that can be from a lot of things. It can be from stress. It can be not eating enough probiotic foods. It can be like sauerkraut, kimchi, kombucha, those sorts of things, which possibly have been avoided because of SIBO in the past. It could be from antibacterial use. I mean, there's a lot of different reasons that this could be, but it's something.
I'm gonna pause you, Kylene. So if you have SIBO, the issue is that you're fermenting. There's certain foods that are fermenting in your gut, and so you don't then necessarily want to add in fermented foods like probiotic rich foods like a kimchi or sauerkraut. So I know people who've worked with me, we always talk about that, like when it might be appropriate. It is a little bit case by case, and she's absolutely right, because of like past SIBO, I've been kind of afraid of it and haven't been able to retest until now. So now seeing this, I'm like, oh, okay, I need to add back in those like good probiotics in my food as well. But everyone's a little bit different. So that might be why if you've like followed some like Instagram guru and they're like, try kimchi, and you try it and you blow it up, there may be some fermentation that's happening with that food.
Yeah, 100%. So like in Sophie's case, she said she had been avoiding it for a while, and it may not necessarily be something that, she has every single day, all day, goes crazy on it, but maybe we bring in a targeted probiotic at this point, something like that. So if you scroll down this page, you'll see bacillus. So you'll recognize that, right? Like it's a beneficial bacteria. It's that family that you'll see in a lot of probiotics. So it's not necessarily a bad bacteria that she has high here. In fact, the idea that she has Akkermansia and bacillus that are both high, sometimes those will get high when you take some really, really good probiotics over a period of time. So again, these aren't necessarily bad. However, when you get things out of ranges, it indicates some imbalances. And so, for example, when bacillus is high, it can indicate constipation or some digestive dysfunction, so reduced digestive function. So maybe some low stomach acid, stuff like that.
Which makes total sense, right? When I mentioned like, what are my symptoms? Like, okay, it's kind of a little bit constipated. And like something else to even look at here is like, it says, 2.98 to the fifth, which is lab high. And if you look over to the right, like they think that anything over 1.5 e to the fifth is high. So you can see it's just barely like basically 2 points over what they think. So that's why it's like, it seems like it correlates to how mild the symptoms are for me. And I think that's a really good note in saying like, you have to find, in my experience, you have to find the line between getting too nitpicky that it drives you insane. Cause I know there's probably a lot of type A ladies on this call, versus like really addressing when there's a real problem, right? And kind of, because no one's gut's ever perfect. Like, sorry, that doesn't happen. No one ever gets like DLs on everything. It's just like not, a thing. So I hope that helps also explain how to find the range for yourself of like where it's applicable to do something versus maybe like, chill out on your overextending yourself or something.
Yeah, you always have to correlate it with your symptoms. And honestly, there are some clients that will feel so good after a test, and I will be like, I would really prefer to maybe test to make sure something that was pretty major is gone, but they're like, I feel good and I don't want to retest. And they're like, you got to respect that and be okay with it, because actually I'm a little envious of that because I can't stop testing because I'm like, what's going on in my body? It's so fascinating. So you do have to kind of find that line where it's like, okay, we're basing it on symptoms and seeing how we feel, and then we're correlating. And Sophie's saying, yeah, this correlates because look, she has H. pylori, that lowers stomach acid, that reduces digestive function. Well, guess what? The bacteria that are showing up is kind of indicating, low stomach acid, constipation, and reduced digestive function. So it makes sense. It all kind of correlates together. So same thing here, low stomach acid, constipation. This actually can cause some gas. So it's not listed as high, it's just showing up. It's not a huge deal. And here we have potential autoimmune triggers. So one thing I always like to clarify with people when we see this is they are not causal, they're correlative, meaning a lot of people that have autoimmune diseases will see higher amounts of these bacteria. Now, these are showing up, they're not listed as high. So again, she's done a really great job. There's not extremes anywhere really on her GI map, which is great. And again, these don't necessarily like, oh my gosh, I have 3 of these, I'm going to get an autoimmune disease. That's not what that means. It just means that there's a little bit of correlation, and typically this is an area that we like to see DLs on. So most of this is going to be pretty easy to address. This is the fungi yeast, so no candida is showing up or anything like that, which is good. No, not these viruses. I don't know if I've ever seen these viruses show up on this.
Yeah, I have not ever. Yeah.
Parasites here, none. That's great. Now, something I also like to kind of share with people is that when you do stool testing, depending on how long things have been going on in your body, the next test, you might address everything on the first test, see that it's gone, and then some other things may show up. So for example, candida may show up on the next test, or 1 or 2 parasites might show up. They have actually a really good protection mechanism, and once you kind of get in there and break up the home that they're living in and start killing stuff and cleaning things up and healing the gut, sometimes more will show themselves. And that doesn't mean that what you're doing is not being effective. In fact, it's actually supporting what you're doing, and it's showing us that there's a few different layers. Now, that doesn't always happen. Some people will see a test result, address it, and that's it. They're like, great. Other people will have to go through a process of layers because things have been going on for a long time, and they just sort of show up in different layers. So the good thing is that on this, there's none that have showed up, which is awesome. And this is probably because she's already done a lot of work.
I'm just going to add, I just had somebody right before this who has some clear SIBO signs from her GI maps, and she was really upset because she had H. pylori, and she was really upset because she had done an H. pylori screen. She thought she had SIBO. She had brought that to her physician. She was told she didn't have H. pylori. She was told she didn't have SIBO, and now 2 years later, she's like really in a bad place, and she was really upset about that. And I just explained basically what Kylene said. I said, you may have had H. pylori or something like that going on, but it was being hidden because these guys, these bacteria, I don't know why I call them guys, these bacteria, they like to, look, they found a home, right? They exist. Everyone comes in contact with bacteria and pathogens, period. It's just whether or not they're going to exist in your body, right? And so they found like a good place to hang out, and they've like built a house around it.
Yep.
And now you're taking down their house.
They're very self-protective. They're really, really smart. That's why a lot of them are antibiotic resistant. But there's also exposure. So for example, if somebody's drinking tap water, and that's one thing that if they're getting a recurrent thing on their GI map that just will not go away, that's something to consider is like what's your environmental exposure to some of these, but then also taking into consideration, are you having any symptoms? Is it causing any problems for you? So again, big picture, where is it coming from and how are you feeling? Parasites, no. Worms, no. I have had worms show up before. It's something you don't want, so that's good. And then it gives us some digestive health markers. Hers are all really great. She's got, this is an indicator of how well you break fat when you're eating fatty foods, and it's good. This is like your pancreatic digestive enzyme markers. Those are in a good range. Beta glucuronidase there is in a good range, which is good because if it's really, really high, it's one pathway that can indicate some difficulties in eliminating estrogen effectively from your body. So at least this pathway is pretty good. She's going to talk more about estrogen pathways and stuff when she does the hormone test in a minute. No blood in her stool, which is great. You never want to see that. And secretory IgA, this is one that is showing a little bit low. So this is one we want to talk about because it's really important. This is part of your immune system defense. So it protects against pathogens. It helps maintain a good microbiome balance. So if you remember from earlier, her general microbiome is low. And here we have secretory IgA low as well. So both are kind of suppressed right now. And then it also protects against food antigens. And so that's like your immune system response against certain foods that you'll be eating. So secretory IgA, basically an immune system response that you would like to be higher. So below 500 is basically considered suppressed. This isn't like extraordinarily alarming for me because I know that when you bring in some support, this will bounce right back up. I had a client one time whose secretory IgA was a 2 and bumped right back up by the next test. So it's something that definitely responds when you address the right things. And what you want to do to get that up is address infections, address food sensitivities, address the imbalances that show up on the GI map, everything that she's already doing. And then right underneath this is Anti-Gliadin. So this is one immune system reaction to the gliadin protein in gluten. And this is just maybe a tiny bit higher than what I would hope to see in somebody who's 100% gluten-free, but it's actually not a bad range. And it may be a little correlated with the low secretory IgA there. So if the IgA goes up a little bit, the anti-gliadin may come down because I know she's gluten-free.
Let me explain that so a little bit. So when your immune system is suppressed and you have a sensitivity to gluten, if I'm getting accidentally exposed to gluten, my immune system like literally is so low, it's lacking the ability to mount a proper response to gluten. So in the past, it might be really, that anti-gliadin would probably be really high, but my immune system in the gut there is being suppressed. So when we get that back up, what Kylene is saying, the anti-gliadin, I mean, honestly, it would probably just show me better if I'm getting more accidental exposure than I think I am, because I don't eat gluten, but sometimes, it's sneaky, sneaky bastards.
Yeah, so basically this is like the protective mechanism and this is the reactive mechanism. So the antibodies are the reactive. They see that you've eaten the gluten and they're going to react and mount an immune response against it. And this part, the secretory IgA, is actually what helps like bind those undigested food particles and those proteins and stuff and flush them out of the system, which actually can help support this reaction from not being maybe as extreme. And so these are both really great markers, especially to see when somebody is actually gluten-free. Like if this is really high, then you're like, whoa, maybe I am getting some accidental exposure here, or maybe something else is going on. Like, why would that be so high if I'm not eating gluten? So it's kind of an interesting marker. For other people, it's more of a convincing marker. They don't want to go gluten-free, and you'll see it be in like the 350 range, and you're like, no, this is like, dude, you're having a major immune system response to gluten. You got to cut that out. So it just kind of depends on the person. But yeah, we definitely want to make sure that the secretory IgA is supported because it's a protective part of your immune system. It helps your gut lining like stay healthy and not get inflamed, because these antibody responses, this part of the immune system that we don't want stimulated, is what ultimately causes the inflammation part of what's going on in the gut. And so this part is really cool because it can help calm the inflammation and calm that immune system response. So it's pretty awesome. So we want to make sure that that's up higher. And inflammation here in terms of calprotectin, this is a marker in her colon. And so like, for example, if somebody had like major IBS or IBD or ulcerative colitis or Crohn's or something, they may see a little bit of blood in their stool, and then they may see a really high number here. And hers is in a really great place. It's below the normal range. And so that's good. We don't want to see inflammation. This is just an interesting little add-on that they do. So like if you have H. pylori, they tell you if you want to do antibiotics, which we don't typically encourage, it's always the client's choice, but there's other ways to go about it. If you do want to take antibiotics, then they'll tell you like which ones are what your body seems to be responsive to or resistant towards. So it'll say resistant or whatever. And so it's kind of a nice little add-on if somebody's like, I'm going to go to the doctor, and they'll have a little list of antibiotics that might work for them. So overall, basically, she has a really clean, great GI map. She's got a little bit of low immune system with the secretory IgA. She's got a little bit of low microbiome in general. So we want to increase the diversity, because that ultimately in the long run is what prevents further imbalances. And we particularly want to go in and knock out the H. pylori specifically in a targeted way. So that's kind of where her protocol would surround, is kind of increasing her secretory IgA, increasing her good beneficial gut bacteria, and then specifically targeting the H. pylori as well. Yeah, so I hope you guys found that interesting.
Let's take a pause.
Yeah, I'm just hopping back on here and looking at some of the comments. Okay, good.
Especially
Oh,
just a
cool. You were
summary
writing
for
little summaries. I
people.
love that. Yes, that's so helpful.
Yeah.
Cool.
So, do people have questions about that? Because that's a lot of information you probably have never looked at, or words you've never
Right.
heard before. And feel free to like just drop it into the chat
Yeah.
if you have a question. Love the summary. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah.
I love
Yeah.
it. It's so fun. I love talking about this test. Like, if you couldn't tell, I'm like obsessed with it.
Yeah. So, what's interesting about this is like, I feel like, oh, Kaylin, I'm just amazed at what you can test for. So specific. Yes, Kaylin.
And you know what's
Super
really
specific.
cool is when we were talking about earlier, I think probably Sophie and I have both had this experience where the people that come to us are the people who have gotten told from their physician, your test results are normal, there's nothing I can do, I'm sorry, we'll monitor you or whatever, come back in 6 months, but you still feel like crap. These are the tests that is so cool to be outside of the insurance system, have total flexibility to do whatever we want to do and whatever we want to test for. And so we're able to do these really state-of-the-art labs that are coming out that show exactly what's happening in your body and how it can correlate to how you're feeling. And so probably both of us have had clients, on the phone crying like, oh my gosh, like this answers so many questions for me. So it's a really, really cool thing.
So Nicole's asking, how would you suggest going about getting a test? Well, so glad you asked. You can run it through us if you felt comfortable with that. So we have a special announcement at the end, and we're going to talk about how you can get access to that through us. So
yeah. To answer the question though, no, you don't get it done at any lab. These are very specific. Somebody has to order it for you. In our case, we ship them to your home. You take it in the privacy of your home and send it back to the lab, and whoever ordered it for you gets the results and goes over them with you personally.
I'm in awe, also overwhelmed by seeing all the work and the change that needs to happen, but really intrigued. Oh yeah, it can feel a little overwhelming, and I think something to note is like, again, just finding that balance for you. Like, I think Kylene and I both feel like we really want to empower women to take charge of their health before it gets to a critical point, because for us that wasn't even an option on the table, and we were told we were crazy, depressed, like all these things, and meanwhile, like our guts are funky, our hormones are funky. And so once you have a second to like digest your information around what's going on in your health, which takes as long as it's going to take you, then you can start to apply the methods and really take charge of that. It's a different paradigm shift, right, than taking an antibiotic or that's quick fix. It's just not the way that we think about these things, because the body is this beautiful biochemical machine that is trying so hard to keep you healthy every second of every day. And we can do so much to affect change. So yeah. I hope that helps.
And that's not to say that, sometimes you have to do an integrative approach. Sometimes you have to take a medicine. Sometimes and that's not to make anybody feel bad, because sometimes that happens. That's right. That's okay. But there are so many times when we can do other interventions that can actually really protect our guts and really like save us from a whole lot of feeling yucky, because some of those things that we take, while necessary on occasion, can ultimately make us feel through the process.
Yeah. Do people want to see how this is affecting my periods and my cycle and my hormones?
Yes.
Give us a yes if you want to see that. I see Carly and Nicole have their videos on.
I want to look at your test.
Yeah. Shannon, yes. I love it. Okay, cool. And then we'll answer your specific questions too as we go through, and at the end, and we have a really special announcement. So I'll try. Oh, I need you to give me screen sharing abilities.
How do I do that? I think I can maybe just make you
the host, maybe.
A host, yeah.
And it looks like we have 2 new people on, Crystal
and
Welcome,
Kendra. Ladies.
Hi.
Yes. And I hope you weren't waiting very long because I was talking and so I didn't see the notification to let you in. So I hope you weren't sitting there, but welcome.
Where is it? Hmm. 1 second, please. It's funny, as you were going through everything, I was looking back at my old tests and I was like, oh my gosh, I've just come so far.
Oh, totally. Totally. I think that too. I look back at myself, I'm like, oh my gosh, I had so many parasites and this and that, blah, blah. What's
Yeah.
so cool is that everything that we listed on there, you guys, is addressable without medication.
Yes. Yep. That's the biggest takeaway. Um, can you guys see my screen?
I can. Yeah.
Okay, cool. So I'm not going to go through this entire test because we would be here all day and it's 19 pages. This is why you should definitely work with a trained professional like Kylene or I or anyone else that you trust around this stuff, because there's a lot of ways to interpret hormones. They're not like stagnant, right? Hormones change throughout the month for women, even from day to day. So I will pull out the things that are most notable here. So this is like a hormone testing summary, and this is called a Dutch test. This is a urine test that's shipped to your house. Again, you would take in the privacy of your own home. And you take it in the luteal phase. So you take it after you've ovulated, but before your menstrual cycle. And this is where we can really get the best range of estrogen and progesterone, so your main female sex hormones, as well as testosterone. It tells us some of the upstream hormones that are contributing to your hormonal balance, like DHEA. It also informs us how your cortisol is working, which is one of your called a glucocorticoid, but basically it's a stress hormone that's secreted from the adrenal glands, and we're going to talk about that today because stress is pretty relevant, I would say, right? Everyone's stressed out. Anyone not stressed? So in the summary page, what we see is some really good stuff, like really good stuff, especially when like basically a year and a half ago, my hormones are all completely suppressed. So estrogen, estradiol E2 is in range. You can tell because it has the stars, and that's the in range amount there. Progesterone is in range, which means that I ovulated. So if you guys are confused around that, when you ovulate, you create something called the corpus luteum, and that is what progesterone is made from. And progesterone has a lot of great benefits that we'll talk about sometime in the future. Testosterone is also in range, which is great. If it was too high, I might be experiencing things that are common with PCOS. So like hair on my upper lip or on my chin, thinning hair on the top of my head, things like that can be like too much testosterone. So this is really good. You can see over here, there's like this daily free cortisol pattern, which is you take the saliva test 4 times throughout the day. Actually, it's the night before and then next morning. And you can see the values they have here is between the black lines, and I'm the patient, so I'm the red line. So you can see it's kind of like, it's kind of amazing, actually. It kind of like follows.
I don't think I've ever seen one like that. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's funny because I was looking at mine from last year, and the middle range, this one went like through the roof.
Yeah.
Meaning that I was either exercising or I was like, I don't know, something crazy was happening. Now, what this does show though is that, I could be higher, I'm a little bit low, especially when you look over at the 24-hour free cortisol and the metabolized cortisol specifically. That yellow arrow, this 2489 is below the range. And so this is interesting because low cortisol, to summarize, could be caused by the same things that high cortisol could. So cortisol is this stress hormone, and it can be kind of showing this way because I have either been under a lot of mental emotional stress, I don't know, maybe COVID, maybe running a business, like a million things, right? But also there can be internal stress going on that can be causing this. So we just found some of my internal stress, right? My H. pylori, some bacteria. I believe I also do have some candida going on. It could be things like parasites or heavy metals, which I haven't tested for. Okay, so again, that's stress. So something is kind of like making my stress a little low. So ideally we would see that a little bit higher. Yeah, so that's just kind of.
Just to clarify for people, metabolized cortisol is what your body creates Free cortisol is what your body is circulating. So her body is not producing very much cortisol right now, but what it is producing, it is circulating and utilizing. So it's like, got it, we don't have a lot, so we're going to utilize what we have. You ultimately want the arrows to both be pointing in almost the exact same direction, and preferably both in range.
Yes.
So yeah, these are pointing, if you think about it, almost opposite directions if the free cortisol was tipped over a little bit more. So, and I believe, if I remember correctly, tell me if I'm wrong, Sophie, that is trending more thyroid issues when they're pointing sort of opposite like
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
Yes. So there's a lot of like reasons why for this kind of positioning of the arrows, as Kylene just explained. And one of them could be like internal infection, but also stress, mental, emotional. And the last one, there's a few others, but the last one that's relevant to me is hypothyroidism. So again, I have Hashimoto's, and that means I have to constantly be monitoring that. So I need to get, what this tells me is I need to get a new thyroid panel done, which I do often because I want to see what's going on. So there could be just when your thyroid, which is like your key thing that stimulates all your metabolism in your body, when that's slow, everything else slows down, including like your digestion, right? That's why I was constipated. That's why I was so fatigued. That's why I was gaining weight. My metabolism was really, really low. So I want to see, hey, is there something funky with my thyroid that's causing this cortisol, or is it just the H. pylori and just, being a human and being stressed out? And of course, I manage my stress as best I can. Okay, I'm going to skip this page because it's a whole lot of numbers and kind of confusing. This is the next page. So a couple of things, a lot to look at. So I'll just pull out the things that are kind of things to work on. So here we have estrogen, and just like maybe a note, if you can follow along this, do you see the pregnenolone at the top? Kind of like starts the whole hormone process. So this is something really important to know, is like hormones aren't created in a vacuum. They come from kind of hormones upstream. So pregnenolone creates, as you can see through the arrow, progesterone, and on this left-hand side, DHEA, which converts down into this thing called androstenedione, which converts into something you probably have actually heard, which is testosterone. Now, through a process called aromatization, which you guys can check out on my Instagram, actually talking about that today, testosterone and androstenedione are converted into this estrogen. So your estrogen actually comes from this process, basically from your male sex hormones. So women have male sex hormones as well. I know we all think that we don't, but we do. And it just kind of goes further downstream. And this is the beauty of a Dutch test. So if you go to like an MD and you get your like estrogen tested, it might show up completely normal. Like on my previous test, I had really, really low estrogen, but it could have been like a summary of all the estrogen as opposed to like the very specific places in the body in which it breaks down. So the most relevant thing to show you is my 16-OH, which is just a version of estrogen, and my 4-OH are good. This one's a little low, but that'll kind of probably balance out as everything else balances out. But this is good because these are like the estrogens that are proliferative and causing estrogen-based cancers and things like that. So it's actually really good news to see that in range or even lower than in too high. But the most important thing on this page, do you guys see it says 2-OH-E1, and it's like all the way over here past the arrow. Again, this isn't a big, huge deal that it's way past the arrow because this is like the good estrogen. If my 4-OH or my 16-OH was way past, that's when you would be thinking, man, like you really have a lot of the estrogen, and like, do I have heavy cycles? Do I have acne? Do I have painful breasts? These are all estrogen dominant type of symptoms, which a lot of women who come to work with me are experiencing really heavy and painful cycles. And that's one of the places we would want to look. Basically, are you creating too much estrogen, or is it kind of downstream effect? Now, what's important here for me is this is another way that people can be kind of, quote, estrogen dominant. I'm creating plenty of estrogen and the good kinds. But this over here, this left where it says COMT methylation, this is how my liver is methylating. So basically how I'm detoxing my estrogen out of my body. So when you create estrogen and any hormone, your body uses it up, right? And then your liver, which we always think about how your liver detoxes from alcohol, right? Like, oh man, I really gotta help my liver out. I binge drink, right? So same is true for your hormones. Your liver packages up your hormones, like extra hormones like estrogen, and it sends it out of the body through the intestine. So for me, this is showing that my COMT methylation in my liver, you go all the way over here to this methylation activity. Do you see, guys, that it's just barely over the low? And that this is like the methylated form, and this is all the way still in red, meaning that I have very low methylation in my COMT, meaning that my estrogen is not getting out of the body once it's being used. It's getting recirculated in the liver, and this is causing some of my other symptoms, most likely. So I do get like swollen breasts sometimes before my cycle. I do get some PMS. It's not super extreme. But yeah, it's not horrible and debilitating, right? So it's kind of interesting. So why does this happen is really the next question that Kylene and I always want to ask. And when we're looking at COMT, there's two things that really help this happen: magnesium and something called SAMe. And most everyone is deficient in magnesium. So there's kind of an assumption there. And the other one requires more testing. So big picture, this means my hormones are actually in a pretty good place, but the stress of either the infection or my hypothyroidism is suppressing some of my cortisol. My sex hormones look good. I'm ovulating, no problems there, but I'm having some estrogen dominant symptoms, most likely because there's this issue with COMT in my liver. And so I really need to focus on supporting my liver, supporting some magnesium, investigating if there's anything else going on through some blood work. And, this can all be affected by, slower digestion, right? So going back to the digestive system, it's super tied into the liver as well. So there's many things that could be going on. I mean, the H. pylori could be lowering my ability to absorb certain nutrients that could help with this process. So this is why it's so important when we think about, why am I having these estrogen dominant symptoms like heavy periods? Well, there could be a lot of reasons. Please don't go out and just supplement willy-nilly, because as you can see, the body is so complex and there's really specific things for each woman. So
yeah.
that is,
so there's a question, and then I just want to make a comment too. If you go back to that one page where your estrogen is, so just in terms of supplementation is so important, because you don't want to just guess. So someone may feel estrogen dominant and have heard of a supplement called DIM and think, well, I'm just going to take this because it lowers my estrogen levels. And you don't necessarily want to lower your estrogen levels. They may be in a very healthy range, like Sophie's are in a very healthy range. You wouldn't necessarily want to lower those. All you want to do, and you only know this if you run a lab like this, all you want to do is help the clearance. So what's been marked for excretion, because it's already been used, you want to get it out of your body. So like if you are having constipation, this is one of the reasons, like I talk about poop all the time. If you're constipated, then you're reabsorbed. Like, so what is marked for excretion in poop? Dead bugs from your microbiome, chemicals, toxins, and utilized hormones that have already been processed. But what happens is if they sit in your colon, toxins can be reabsorbed, which puts stress on your liver, which hinders this process. And your hormones actually can be reabsorbed, leading to estrogen dominant symptoms. So you've got to be pooping, and you've got to be prioritizing all of these things together. And so you do not want to just guess and be like, oh, I'm just going to take this supplement because I fit the symptoms. It could totally mess you up and make you feel worse, actually, than you did before. And then Carly had a question: are 16-hydroxy and 4-hydroxy affected by soy?
Yeah, I just responded. So yeah, it could be. It depends on the woman. Soy can increase estrogen, and if you're prone to it, and potentially in the wrong forms, right? So it's very individual. Some forms of soy seem to be okay for some women, like fermented soy, like miso and tempeh. But when we're drinking like gallons of soy milk and processed soy, that's where we start to see a lot of issues on Dutches with the bad types of estrogen.
And most soy that you're going to find is genetically modified. So quality is always really important when you're talking about that.
Yep. And the only other thing I just want to show you guys that's really cool about this test is it gives us something called nutritional organic acids, which are kind of metabolites that we pee out. And so what's really cool is I can see here how well I'm absorbing B12, which is great. I'm in range. B6, glutathione, which is our master antioxidant, is at the high end of the range here at 55.6, which is really interesting for many reasons. One of them being that I have a genetic SNP that makes it hard for me to create glutathione. Glutathione is a master antioxidant, which helps with all of this stuff. So you get antioxidants from antioxidant-rich foods, right? So I can really go hard in on those blueberries and those blackberries, but I can also supplement to support my glutathione. And by the way, this is a lot better than it was a couple of years ago. And then the other things just to note about this test, in case you were thinking about running this and you weren't sure if it was good for you, a cool thing that you get to see is your dopamine and norepinephrine, so neurotransmitters. So a lot of people can correlate this with things like anxiety and sleeplessness. Melatonin is also in here, so if you're having trouble sleeping, and as you can see, low end of range, melatonin helps us sleep. It's also an antioxidant, so mine's a little bit low. And that correlates because I do sometimes have trouble sleeping. And then the last thing is this oxidative stress marker, which is really great because it's in range. And previously I've had a lot of oxidative stress, which can inform like DNA damage, which as Kylene, I'm sure could dive into much better than I can. Sometimes this could be a leading part of cancer and other serious disease. So there's a lot of really good stuff on my labs, and there's just some things that I want to work on. So Kylene, do you want to talk about kind of like a quick overview of what I'm going to be doing to work on this stuff, and then we can answer your guys' specific questions and kind of take it from there?
Just real quick note on this page too. Neurotransmitters are highly regulated in the gut. There's about, I think it's like 50% of your dopamine is, created and regulated in your gut. Melatonin is like 90% produced in your gut. And so again, just kind of reiterating that correlation, you cannot, if you have hormone issues, you cannot just be like, I'm going to take some estrogen and it's all going to be fine. Or I'm going to work on this clearance pathway, but I'm not going to do anything with food sensitivities. Yeah. I'm not going to think about pooping. I'm not going to think about my gut. I'm not going to do any of this stuff. And it becomes a huge problem if we ignore that side of it. A lot of times when infections or pathogens or whatever, leaky gut is addressed, melatonin increases. And same thing with your neurotransmitters, they start to regulate. And so again, this is really, really correlated with depression and anxiety and how we feel. And we think we are just so taught to associate that this is in your brain. And in reality, it's inflammation in your body from other things that are addressable, which I think is one of the most exciting things in the world.
You know what, and I want to spend a moment on that because like, we're not going to get so far deep into this, but I mentioned in the beginning how I had like suicidal tendencies, and I've always struggled with anxiety, and it's so hard to talk about. People don't want to talk about their anxiety, their depression, and their mood issues. And we think we can just take like medications and like in full transparency, I've definitely taken medication for that. And that's fine. Like that's sometimes fine. But to Kylene's point, it could also be related to your gut or some issue internally. So I just think that that's really important to highlight because so many people are dealing with like mental health related issues and don't even realize that it could be connected to something outside of like what they're naturally producing in their brain. It could be related to your gut too.
Yeah. And I mean, I can personally relate to that when things aren't quite right. I start to feel anxiety. I'm like, whoa, like I know that something, because that's not my normal, that's not my set point. That's not how I feel when my body is working optimally. And so it's a really good indicator of needing to dig deeper. And like Sophie said, there's a time and place for medication. But that's definitely an area where get the support, get out of the pit, like I say, get the support so you can function like a normal human being, but don't stop asking questions and continue to support your body. So overall, I'm not going to give like specific supplements because again, we don't, this is so personal. We don't want to throw out, too many specific.
Can you guys hear us? It says Linda lost sound.
Oh, I can hear it. Okay.
Okay.
Can you hear us, Linda?
Hi, Linda. Fine here. Okay.
So yeah, we basically, we don't want you to go off and, like I said, with dim, like, oh my gosh, I feel like I have these symptoms, so I'm going to go take a supplement. So with her GI map, again, just to kind of summarize, her priority is going to be increasing her beneficial microbiome. So she may choose to do that with some targeted probiotics. She may choose to do that by increasing some of her fermented foods. She's definitely going to want to address the H. pylori. There's several different ways. There's several different products that are very effective for that. There are some teas, there are some herbal botanicals and things like that. And these are very powerful things that can completely knock it out. She would want to do a gallbladder liver flush to make sure the H. pylori is out of the liver. Avoid coffee, and make sure she's throwing away, lipsticks and swapping out her toothbrushes and things like that. And then supporting her secretory IgA. Now, again, that kind of gets addressed when everything else gets addressed, but you can bring that up with things like immunoglobulins and colostrum and things that support that portion of your immune system, as well as healing the gut and soothing the gut and supporting that protective barrier and that protective mechanism. In terms of her hormones, I don't know if you kind of want to talk about that. You'll probably end up taking some.
Wait, sorry. Also, we don't just treat with supplements, guys. So what we didn't talk about is that when I was diagnosed with Hashimoto's and anxiety and all this stuff, all my gut stuff, you guys, I was eating gluten, dairy, soy, sugar, alcohol, like probably too much coffee, probably the wrong types of coffee with lots of mold in it. I was super stressed. I had no stress mechanism issues. I was dealing with emotional trauma that I'm still uncoupling because emotional trauma lives in the body. This is part of it. I know you don't want to hear it, but it's part of it. Emotional trauma, right? So like, I know that, again, to someone's point, like that can seem overwhelming, but it's not like I just, all of a sudden one day I was like, organic, grass-fed, no problems with stress. Like, no, you step through this. That's why Kylene and I work with women over 6 months to a year. So these are the mechanisms that I already have, the levers that I've pulled in my health. Like, I am gluten-free, I am dairy-free, I am soy-free. I try to prioritize sleep. I try to not drink too much. That's really hard for me. I try to not have too much sugar. I love chocolate, so I'll try to do dark chocolate, I meditate. I'm not great at it, but I do it. I've done emotional trauma release work. I do yoga. I try to work out. I try to get in the sun. And that's what's worked for me,
And you can see that reflected in her tests, you guys, because while honestly, looking at these tests, we're nitpicking. There's not that much going on with her right now. And that's proof of where she's come, all this effort that she has put in with her nutrition and lifestyle and previous protocols that she's been on. It makes a difference. It makes a difference. I mean, there's little minor things. Okay, H. pylori, knock that out. Support your immune system a little bit. Support your estrogen clearance a little bit. Some of that's like with estrogen clearance, that's like genetic tendency stuff. That may be like a long-term thing that you support, right? But everything else is going to be supported through it's going to be maintained basically through your nutrition, through variety in nutrients and foods and fermented foods and stress relief and sleep and everything else. And sun, you mentioned that is so important.
And then, a couple extra things that I'm going to be adding in: dry brushing, to like support my lymphatic system, like liver support. I don't have access to an infrared sauna, so I can't do that, but like sweating, Epsom salt baths, making sure I'm drinking that filtered tap water, like these are the steps that I'm going to be taking, just to try to prioritize where I'm at. So I feel like that really summer, I feel like that's pretty good, right?
Yeah, I think so, without going into like specific supplements and things that we can't really share. That's very individualized. And just to kind of say it, just a reminder, like everybody is very specific and unique. And so where a lot of the lifestyle changes and nutrition, some of that's like overview, big picture, like good for everybody. Like everybody should go gluten-free. If you have a hormone issue, if you have a gut issue, you should go gluten-free. Like that's non-negotiable, like in my client world.
Yeah. If you have acne, and you're having cow's dairy, like if you have endometriosis and heavy periods and you're having cow's dairy, like I would highly, like really recommend, taking it out. These are things we do know through science, but then some of the other minutiae you do test for so you can get some more specific drill down. And that's probably why, if you're on this call and you're still listening and you're still having symptoms, why you haven't had the relief from the symptoms.
Yeah. So guys, what questions do you have? Because we have a really, really, really exciting announcement that we want to share with you. So let us know real quick if there's anything we can answer, and then we're going to jump into the announcement.
Feel free to unmute yourself or type in the chat, whichever one's easier. We realize we can't see most of your faces except for the brave Nicole here. So you can turn on your videos too so we can see you if you want to.
And just thanks for spending this time with us. We appreciate it.
Yeah. Hey, Carly.
Hi. I have a super quick question. For is sort of the more gentle goat dairy still potentially an issue for acne or dermatitis, that kind of thing?
You want to answer that one?
So I actually personally, and this is a personal thing, I view goat cheese differently than cow's cheese. There's a couple different reasons for that. And it is a per person situation. So a lot of times what I'll say for people is, go completely dairy free for a while. And then if you're going to reintroduce something like goat's cheese or sheep's cheese and see how you do with it. Because typically it is going to be less of a negative response for most people, whether digestively or with the liver hormones or whatever. But then if they're going to do, we have sort of like a tiered approach. If you are going to reintroduce dairy at all, it should be raw, organic, grass-fed dairy. And so that's going to be like the highest quality. It's going to have raw is going to have some vitamin C and probiotics that like the rest of the cheese doesn't. And you want to make sure it's from a very healthy source that has a lot of nutrients, as opposed to if you have just regular cheese or milk or yogurt that's from like conventional dairy, it has a lot of inflammatory properties. And so that's typically where we see the issue. So for some people, they're able to just completely eliminate it and then bring back and kind of figure out what works for them. And for some people, they might be able to do raw, organic, grass-fed, regular dairy and then have that occasionally, but they might find like, I can't do that 4 days a week, for example. And then other people may find I can't do regular dairy at all, but goat's cheese is never a problem. And so that's what they put on their salad.
Okay, thank you.
I love goat cheese personally.
Me too. Yeah, I just wrote in the chat that I was able to reintroduce goat's cheese, but I had to take everything out for a while, just like Kylene said, while I healed, right? Because like it could be a trigger at that time. Sometimes we have these like weird food sensitivities. Like I was sensitive to kale, you guys.
Avocado.
Super healthy. Yeah, avocado, right? Like super healthy foods because our immune system's hyperactive. So sometimes we just need to like remove the really inflammatory foods while we heal our gut and our hormones, and then we can reintroduce.
Yeah, definitely. And I like food sensitivity tests because it takes that guessing part out. So like if you have the ability to do like 2 or 3, maybe in the course of like a year and a half or so, that can really be helpful in terms of like identifying which are your long-term food sensitivity reactions and which ones kind of fall off and get caught up in the process.
Mm-hmm. And Shannon says, I'm scared to reintroduce dairy or gluten.
Never reintroduce gluten ever. There's never a reason for that. Continue.
Yeah, like look, Kylene and I have never seen anyone react well to gluten, and there's a very specific reason.
You should be scared.
Yeah, you should be scared. Shannon, you already know this.
Let me. Do you guys mind if I take 2 seconds to explain why? Just really fast, and I'll explain it really fast.
I want to know why we keep saying gluten is not good for anybody.
Yeah, because for me, sometimes understanding that's the motivation, right? And so I know it's a lot of times one of the things that people really want to bring back in as a reintroduction. This is why I say never do it. Gluten, every exposure, doesn't matter how healthy you are. And if you're on this, you probably have things that you're working on. So you wouldn't fall into the, I'm perfect category. So gluten, it doesn't matter how healthy you are, increases a protein called zonulin. Zonulin increases the tight junctions in your gut that literally causes leaky gut when you eat it. Okay, now, depending on how many other stressors are going on, how much other inflammation and immune system response is going on, that may resolve itself because your gut heals, it repairs, blah, 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 blah. But anytime that your tight junctions are opened up when we don't want them to be, that literally opens up the opportunity for chemicals, toxins, undigested proteins to get into your bloodstream. So if you're already having a burdened immune system and inflammatory response, that's literally the last thing you want to do. So it increases your leaky gut, basically, to keep it really simple. Yeah, right there. And allows things into your bloodstream every single time you eat it. It's not dependent on genetics. It's just what happens when you eat gluten. So that's why I say avoid it at all costs. Anybody that comes to me is struggling with gut issues, it's a no-no.
Yeah, and so like to just visualize, I'm a visual learner. On the left-hand side, tight junctions. This is the small intestine mucosal barrier she was talking about. Gluten increases zonulin, which like literally breaks those tight junctions. So there's all these like little holes basically that the gluten can get through, but also like other parasites and things and stuff can trigger this inflammation. And that's what was happening with me and happens to almost every single one of our clients when they come in to see us, which is why we always remove gluten as like a top thing to start with, like day one.
Noted. Yeah.
Sorry. We love bread too.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Questions? Anyone else? Melissa's on, Kendra, Crystal, Sam, Sammy, Nicole, Shannon, Kylene.
Yeah.
Was
Thanks,
this helpful?
Yeah, thanks so much for hanging out with us. All right, we have a massive, very exciting, so informative. Good. I'm so glad. We love this stuff. If you couldn't tell, Nerd City.
Yay. Nerd City was helpful.
Yeah, very insightful, helpful. Yay.
Very insightful. Okay, good.
Okay, wow, that's what we like to hear. And so because of that, we have a really exciting announcement. Oh, empowering.
Yes.
Do you know why? Do you know why? She must know the answer to the quiz. Here we go. You guys, drum roll. In September, Sophie and I have partnered up and we are offering a program called Empower, HR. Empower. And it's all about empowering women to take charge of their health by identifying these issues and learning how to support, intuitive, yeah, exactly. And learning how to support your body. These are the 2 tests that are going to be included in this program, you guys. And that's why we wanted to share them with you and tell you about how connected they are. So it's a 12-week program. You're going to go through these 2 tests. You get weekly Q&A calls like this with us where we're going to talk about different topics. You're getting modules every single week that we talk about. Sophie was talking about a lot of things that we just don't have time for here, right? Like infrared sauna and detox and all these different things. We're going to have all these video modules that you guys get to go through and understand a lot of the nutrition and lifestyle approaches. She's going to talk specifically about, she's going to have some highlights on like PMS and PCOS and all these different things. And then we're gonna have these weekly
how to understand your menstrual cycle and like what can go wrong so you can troubleshoot all of that as well.
Yeah, so like we're gonna give you like gut health 101, PMS 1, or like cycle 101, like all these different things so you can really learn about your body and like understand how it works. Like she just popped up that gut health picture, you know, let's learn about like this physical part of yourself and like what these foods do to it, you know. And so you're really gonna kind of have this understanding, because I feel like that educational piece is really what motivates us to make change. So again, you're gonna get those 2 labs, you're gonna get weekly Q&A sessions, you're gonna get a live test review session with one of us, depending on you know, how it's divvied up, but basically you're gonna get the test result session call with us where we go over this exact thing and kind of work with you and give you a personalized protocol. And then you're going to get just so many educational tools and support over the course of 12 weeks to talk about everything we talked about today. So that's coming up in September. We're so excited.
We're so excited.
Okay. And so what we wanted to do is, if you guys are interested in that, I'm going to drop a link. And what you can do, because we haven't technically launched it yet.
This is like a pre announcement, kind
like
of
pre-launch. You guys are
pre.
Yeah. And so we're just kind of throwing it out there because we were doing this. I just put the link in the chat. And so if you guys are interested, put your names in there. There's a couple questions just to learn more about you and like what would you look for in a program like this, because it's still under development. So we want to know what you want. And that's going to be in September. And so if you're interested in, you know, doing more of these webinars or getting notified when it's launched, click that, fill it out so we have your information, and then you guys are going to be the first to know when it comes out. Yeah, and there will be, we can't take like 100 people. I'm sure we're going to have a limit on it. So make sure if you're interested that you put your name in there, because we can't do like 100 test results.
Yes, as you can see, we did a high level today, so it does get very personal. Also, I think, you know, Kylene and I feel really strongly about making it a really safe container for women. Having community is so important when you're going through health changes, especially when you're young, in your 20s, 30s, 40s, just like, why is this happening to me? We need to understand like how this is happening for us and what we can do to help our bodies, and how you have community. One of the most important things that I've ever had is people I can talk to about this. Like Kylene and I talk about my stuff all the time and her stuff. And it's helpful to have friends and other women that are strong, powerful women to be with you. So that's a really, we don't need to offer this. Like we have both successful practices one-on-one, but we just feel like this group is going to be able to give you like the best of both worlds and have a community of women who really understand what you're going through to really form that friendship for life. So I hope that this is exciting for you guys as much as it's exciting for us. And if not, I hope you guys enjoyed this and this was helpful for you to learn a little bit more. And yeah, if you want to get on the kind of wait list, so to speak, drop your information in there and we will make sure to notify you as things develop.
Yeah, and just like from personal experience, like when I started out taking charge of my health and in that anxiety state and everything, it was about a year later that I did a group program similar to this. And I can't tell you like how empowering that was to learn more, because once that had happened in my body and I was like somewhat, I would say under control, normalized, balanced, whatever you want to say, by the time I did a program like this. But I still wanted to know how I could improve and how I could never, ever, ever get to that place ever again. And this is the crazy thing about it, you guys, is like even through cancer treatment, I never went back to that place. So once you learn how to support your body, really traumatic, difficult, stressful things can still come into your life, and it doesn't mean you have to go to that place ever again. And so like these are really, really, really powerful tools that really have helped both of us. And the great thing about collaborating is that we both have different perspectives, and we both have different specialties and like things that we really enjoy. And so putting those together is going to give you guys so much information on nutrition and lifestyle and how you can really personalize these things to you. And like she said, the community support of these things can be just awesome too. So we're really looking forward to that aspect of it as well. So yeah, hope you'll fill it out and hope to see you in a couple months, because it's gonna be a party, a hormone gut party.
Absolutely. Hormone gut party. Do you guys have any questions? Are you excited about this? Yeah. Do you have any feedback? Do you have anything you want to share? It's
an awesome idea. Yeah, it's going to be awesome. We've already started organizing it, creating the topics. We're going to record the videos together in a few weeks. So we're already rolling with it. And I know like the content's going to be amazing. But again, if you guys are interested, make sure you click on that document and let us know what you're looking for, because we would love to like tweak or adjust or add based on like, what is it that you guys really need? And what can we bring in? And one thing that we didn't talk about that we're going to be including is a mindset piece. And like, we're going to talk a lot about stress. We're going to talk a lot about mindset, because that's like massive in healing. And I think that's really ignored sometimes.
Yeah. Melissa, Kylene, Shannon, Sam, Crystal, Kendra, Carly, any thoughts? You're welcome, Nicole. Put my name on the wait list. Awesome. Yay, Kylene. Yeah, it'll be really comprehensive. I'm excited.
Yeah, it's gonna be awesome.
Cool.
And you guys, let us know too. We would love to do something like this again. So if you have family or friends that you feel like this would be a good fit and you learned a lot from this, we'll probably do something like this again. We could even do the exact same thing again if you want to invite some friends or share. So just kind of be thinking about that. Make sure you're staying in touch with us on our social media or our email list or whatever. And that way you'll be, we can actually do mine next time if you guys want
to do yours. Yeah.
If you wanted to come on and see a different one and invite some friends, we could do the exact same thing again. So we'd love to do that if you found it helpful. Yeah, thank you, Crystal. Thank you, Shannon.
By like symptoms too. So if you guys are having specific symptoms that are coming up and you need to talk about them, and we can show you some examples of how that could be showing up through a test or something like that as well. Yeah. So, and what we could do about it. Yay. You're so welcome, you guys. Have a great weekend.
Yes. Thank you. Thanks for letting us blab about what we like to blab about. It was really fun. So you guys are awesome. We've taken your time for about an hour and a half. So thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it. And hopefully we'll talk to you soon.
Bye, guys.
Thanks, Sophie.
Thanks, Kylene. Gotta run.
All right, bye.